Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. I'm here in Preston on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people that are joining us today, both here in person, especially my friend Linda, but also any guests that are on that are Aboriginal as well. So to get me started, I've got my friend Linda on. Hi Linda.
Hi, how are you, AJ?
I'm fine. For people that don't know who you, where you're from?
So I'm Linda and I'm from originally, my mom's from Bigambul country, which is South West Queensland, New South Wales. But I grew up on Kalkadoon country, which is Mount Isa, northwest Queensland. And I currently live on Bigambul country, which is Townsville.
Wow. So how long have you been in Townsville?
This time I've only been back about 2 years, but I've moved around a lot. So
Yeah.
I originally grew up in Mount Isa, but I've lived in lots of different places.
Yeah. So growing up initially, where did you first grow up in Mount Isa?
Yes, grew up in Mount Isa.
Yep.
And
And how old were you when you left Mount Isa?
I left Mount Isa to go to uni actually in
Oh,
Townsville.
wow.
So that was my
Yep.
first time living in the big city. And
Yep.
I remember going to Townsville the first time and like it was just amazing. I had no idea that, you know, it was just going to be so amazing. And it was amazing. And I was the first person in my family to go to university, my first person in my family for anybody to even think about university. That's just not something that we did. And when I got into uni, my dad was really, really happy. But my mum said, why can't you just get a job like a normal person? I was like, well, I will eventually, but it'll be an amazing job. Yeah, because I wanted to be a social worker. I've always wanted to be a social worker since I was about 13. So
Yeah.
had to go to uni for that.
And did you study social work straight away, or did you do something else before social work?
No. So I left home when I was 16 and things at home weren't great. And so I left home when I was 16, did year 12, like couch surfing, etc., but still went to school. Got a really poor, what they called a T score back in those days. So the lowest was 550 and the highest was 900 and I got 590. So, but I actually applied through a pathways program into community welfare, which was at a university at that time. And it was
Yeah.
an AQUET program, it was an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Community Welfare Program. So, and I didn't get into that either because it's just so, the scores and everything was so bad. But what I did do was I rang the coordinator of the program here at Jack's Cook. I rang her every week for 3 months,
Yeah.
and it was the last week because I didn't get in the first round, then I didn't get in the second round, and so it was like 3 months then until the course started. So I rang her every week and asked if anybody had pulled out, if there was any spots. And the week before uni started, I rang again and she said, look, you're not the first next person on the list, but because it's too late, what I'll do is I'll ring around. If anybody's not coming, which is unlikely, then you can have their spot. So one person wasn't coming, so I got their spot. And so then I came to university. I know, like tenacious, hey. So I got to university, I was so happy. And then I went back home for the first break and I met my ex boyfriend and ended up getting pregnant. And so I went back to uni and did the last 3 months and then took a year off, had the baby, and then went back home, had the baby, and then came back to uni and finished that course. Then I did a Bachelor of Community Welfare. And then I did another 2 years and I did my social work degree. So it took me about 9 years actually to get qualified. And it was a bit of a road because I decided to then get married
Yeah.
and have two more babies. And yeah, did it as hard as a possible way of doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So what made you at such a young age want to be a social worker?
I think I've just always been somebody in my family that was the protector and the helper and somebody that could solve problems. And I grew up in a household that was quite violent at times and had alcohol issues. And so I think that I learned very early on how to manage people's issues. And I think that but I also had an auntie who, my Auntie Lucy, and she was amazing. She was a counsellor at the school, an Aboriginal counsellor at the school. And she was amazing. And then I had another
Yeah.
lady who was another Aboriginal counsellor, but wasn't related to me. Her name is Anna, and she's passed now. And she was also amazing. And I thought, these are two amazing women. And I thought, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important because you said that you were the first in your family ever to go to university.
Yes.
And for a lot of people in 2026, they kind of, as non-Indigenous people, are still trying to grasp that concept that we are sometimes the first in our families ever to do this stuff.
Mm. I'm always saying to people, every person that I meet, particularly I get a lot of, you must be really smart. I can't do that. And I said, actually, I think I'm smarter now because I've done so much schooling, but I wasn't smart when I started. And in fact, I failed high school. And I tell people that, particularly Aboriginal people, I tell them, it's not the work that's hard, it's the commitment to it
Yeah.
and the supports around you to make sure that you will keep going with it.
Yeah. And so what was the first job you did as a social worker or when you graduated from social work?
Well, remember how I told you I did it the hardest way possible?
Yep.
So, so when I finished my social work degree, I failed my last subject in my last year,
Oh,
which meant that I had to redo that subject. I think back now and think, who anyway, how I cope with that even. But so I actually rang up, I remember it was Christmas, and I rang an organisation that I had done some work with and knew them, named ACCA, which people would know back in the day
yeah.
was Aboriginal Islander Childcare Agency, which was a family support service for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It was nationwide, funded under Whitlam. And so when I found out I'd failed and I wasn't going to graduate, even if I had graduated, I still would have rung her and said, "Can I have a job?" And she said, "Why do you want to come work for us? Aren't you qualified?" And I said, "Actually, no, I'm not. I failed, and I'm going to have to do that subject. But either way, I wanted to come work for you guys." And
Yeah.
so I went and worked there for 2 years, did my 6 months of my subject, passed it, and then worked for them for another 18 months before I left. So yes, first place was an Aboriginal, an ACCA, which I loved. It was amazing.
Yeah. So I know you've worked in government and I know you've worked in health. What's your favourite place to work in? Is it with mob and community, or is it in health, or is it in policy and government? What is it?
So I think they all had a benefit to me. So I love working for mob only because it's a family. Like you really don't get that type of working environment if it's not like an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. So there's a different way of working when you work for that sort of community group, and there's different expectations, but there's also different challenges as well, like black politics, things like
Mm.
that, nepotism. And it was that stuff that made me want to go rather than stay. It was that nepotism and the black politics. The work environment I loved. Working for Aboriginal people, I would have stayed there for 1,000 years. Like that, I loved that work. And it wasn't work that I found particularly hard because you knew you were making a difference in people's lives. You really were. You could see it on the ground. But I left there and I went to child safety. And that was really hard because I was seen as somebody who'd almost abandoned my people to go
Yeah.
work for a government agency that was responsible for removing a lot of our kids and stuff. And it absolutely is true. But I had the opinion that if you want to really change things, I'd had 2 years of working in ACCA. I'd been involved in the legislation in the new child protection legislation in Queensland being drafted. I've seen the loopholes that they put in. And I said to myself, if you really want to change the environment, you have to do it from within the power structures. So I joined because I wanted to make a difference inside. And I like to think I did. I certainly pushed back in terms of having children removed for the purposes of, I refused to do investigations when I felt like it was incredibly racist allegations. I always sided with Aboriginal people. I had an insight that people who were working there at the time didn't have. So yeah, I think I made a big difference. And then I went to health. So I loved that type of work because I felt like if I wasn't there, then Aboriginal people's voices weren't being heard
Yeah.
because I was hearing them and I was challenging the status quo. And then I went to work after, I think I was there for about 19 years. And then I went to work for health. I think I just wanted something different. I've done child protection for so long.
Mm.
I loved health. It's so broad and diverse, and there's so many different areas. And again, same issues though. And I struggle because I want to be seen as somebody who's a qualified social worker and gets treated like that everywhere I go. But I know that I have to have a voice. Like I have to have a voice for Aboriginal people because they don't have a
Yeah.
voice. And so sometimes I struggle with that because I think, sometimes it's just easier not being Aboriginal because
Yeah.
you have to argue the point at every. And my daughter has the same issue. She's a nurse and a midwife, and she has far greater struggles because I think that non-Indigenous people don't recognise that she's Indigenous because she's very pale.
Yeah.
And we work in white government structures, so we learn to fit into those white government structures and talk and behave. But once we're around Aboriginal people, we're talking to Aboriginal people. We talk in a different way. We communicate differently. And Aboriginal people recognise that, but non-Indigenous people don't generally recognise it. So they
Yeah.
will do things in front of you that is absolutely racist and just
Yeah.
abhorrent. And it's that challenging that status quo all the time. And then I went and worked in mental health, which is part of health, but a little bit differently. And yeah, again, just the it's all very interesting work, very challenging work in terms of being a social worker, but all very similar themes being an Aboriginal person. Always a challenge.
Yeah. Do you think racism's changed at all since you were a young girl to compared to where you are
Oh,
now? Or do you think it's getting worse?
absolutely, it's changed. It's become more covert. There's lots of legislation now that really dictates that people are willing to litigate, blatant forms of racism. I think that so it's definitely become more hidden or more covert.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and in fact, I'm surprised these days when I see it as blatantly as I do see it sometimes, because once upon a time that was very normal. Now you don't see it as much. So I actually am surprised when I do see it
Yeah.
blatantly, because I think, how do you think you're going to get away with this stuff? But people get away with it all the time now. There are systems in place to protect people
Yeah.
so that they continue to be racist. One of the things I'm seeing recently, though, in the last few years, and I'm loving it, is this absolute increase in Aboriginal people on TVs like ABC Black Comedy. Loved it. Still
Yeah.
love it. Still go back and watch it. Use it in my teaching, etc., like that. I also loved the, NITV, and I love recently more and more Aboriginal people becoming familiar with social media, like yourself, and talking about what it means to be Aboriginal, what it looks like. This is what we go and do. This is how we hunt. This is what we think about when people are racist to us. This is what it's like for us to live in Australia. Well, we don't get cars. I don't know if there was a car, I'm going to get it.
No.
Like that humour, but also that reality checking
Yeah.
in social media, and Aboriginal people feeling a lot more comfortable to actually get
Yeah.
on social media and start to talk about that.
Well, down here in Victoria, we hear that you Queenslanders get free boats.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So where's your boat?
Yeah. We don't get free anything. And in fact, Queensland's probably, one of the most difficult states, I would think.
Yeah. I think it was the last state to hand over Aboriginal affairs from, after the referendum. And yeah, I think it was one of the last states to outlaw homosexuality or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Absolutely. And you need to thank, Joe Bjelke-Petersen for that, because he was in power for a very long time. And,
Yeah.
it's always these political people, isn't it? But yes.
Yeah. Now, a word that gets thrown around a lot is cultural safety. What does cultural safety mean to you, and what makes you feel culturally safe about going into a service or an employer or a shop?
I think it's the openness and willingness of an organisation to be accepting and demonstrate that acceptance. And I'll get really clear examples that I talk to people all the time is things like wearing Aboriginal print. That sends a message. Aboriginal communications, 80-90% non-verbal. Before you even open your mouth, people are, assessing whether you are going to be helpful, whether you're going to be awful, racist, whether you're a service that we want to be, bringing our business to. So, Aboriginal prints, Aboriginal artwork on the walls, but not even just that, like outreach. I'd go in and become part of the community. This business about we have to come to you, like obviously, particularly in places like health, you do need to, but even health, you can do outreach, skin checks, you can do stuff in the communities at art shows or other areas. So lots of outreach, I see that. Organisations where their staff are actually engaged with the Aboriginal community, I think lends itself to a lot more cultural safety for consumers.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also having or trying to have an understanding, because what I've found 99% of the time is people are generally not racist. They're more, for want of a better word, ignorant. They don't know what they don't know. So, and people are quite fearful of offending people. So they're scared to ask the questions. They're scared to come off looking silly or inappropriate or racist. So, and I don't know about you, AJ, but I get a lot of questions where they start with, this might be a stupid question, or they wait until they get to know you a bit before they ask the questions,
Yeah.
things like that. Because sometimes people, and I've met people who say, I've never met an Aboriginal person.
Yeah.
Like, really? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
particularly from, down south.
Yeah. I hear that a lot. And also racist comments they don't mean to say, like, you're very smart for an Aboriginal person,
Oh,
or
yeah.
really you're able to get 2 degrees, and it's like, yeah, I've got 3 masters. Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Someone like you? And it's like, whoa, what do you mean? Like, well, someone like
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
whoa,
I
where
know.
does this thought,
I,
thought process kind of come from? Because when you call it out on them, a lot of the times they are a bit apologetic and they kind of get what you're saying, but there is still some other people that it doesn't matter what you say, they're never going to get it.
no, and you pick those people very quickly. I get a lot of, are you Italian?
Yes.
And when I say I'm Aboriginal,
Yeah.
you almost see, I think we would have preferred you to be Italian. Like, why wouldn't you want to say that you're Italian? And I'm like, because I'm Aboriginal, like, so I get a lot of that. And you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or how Aboriginal are you? Like what percentage? And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. And the other thing I get a lot is, do you know how to, throw a boomerang? Have you eaten goanna? Stuff like that. But that stuff is
Yeah.
a bit funny. But yeah, I get that. But one of the things,
Yeah.
and you're right, some people, it's just like ignorance. They just don't know what they don't know, or they don't know what they're doing is not okay. But some people, you just, no matter what you say, they are entrenched in that belief system, and nothing you say is going to,
Yeah.
which is really, really sad because,
Uh,
you know, you
Yeah.
feel like just flogging
I,
them, really, but you
I
can't.
still hear those comments. I voted no because they're going to take all my land. I voted no
Oh,
because we Aboriginal people get everything for free. They got free houses, free medical services, free dental, free education. It's at primary school, high school, universities. Oh my God. And now they want free laws that allow them to make decisions that are going to impact on my life. It's like, holy shit, I didn't know this was what the no vote was
yeah.
about.
Ah, I know, it was tragic. It's like, it's that political football stuff again, and it just drives. But see, this is the thing with Australia, and I don't think people realise it. It's based on the belief system that we know what we know, and they don't. People have
Yeah.
no understanding about history and what happened to Aboriginal people and what happened to Torres Strait Islander people. People like I teach at your university now,
Yeah.
and I've taught here for about 2 years, just had the anniversary actually. And the amount of people that come through my subject who, like not met an Aboriginal person, has no history or understanding of the history of this country,
Yeah.
and what happened to Aboriginal people, and what it means and what that has on today, what the impact that has on today, like things like, rations and having diabetes now, epidemics and, um, rheumatic heart and, that sort of, people just do
Yeah.
not have any idea about that. And
No.
so when they say things like, when they have an understanding about, Aboriginal people get all this, A, we don't, but B, do you have an understanding about where all this information is coming from?
Yeah.
Because you don't even know what you don't know. Like you don't even know your history of your own country,
Yeah.
let alone anything else. That's the other thing I find difficult is that this you kind of live, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've just recently done some research, and it's really, really brought it back home to me. I went home to Mount Isa to do this research because I'm doing my PhD at the moment,
Yeah.
and I had to interview some Aboriginal women. So I went to a women's group, and I've been to this women's group periodically throughout my life, and and they were talking so broken, and I know broken, I've spoken broken, but I've been away from it for so long that I was really struggling to keep up with the conversation. And I just realized, oh God, I need to get back. I need to get back to my my country to like, I've just stepped away from it so much and lived in this white world. And you kind of like, you don't realize that you've missed so much and how much that is a better way to live.
Yeah.
Now, if you said to somebody, yeah, I'd prefer to go out and live, on country with people, with my people would say, that's just crazy. Why would you want to live in poverty and stuff like that? I said, it's not about the poverty and all that. It's about the relationships with people and the sense of self and that you belong and where you
Yeah.
belong. Yeah, people,
And the safety of those people around me, because they're there to protect me.
yeah,
They're my cousins, they're my relatives. They're not going to let shit happen to me. They're going to be
mm,
there to hold me and
mm,
protect me. And if I fall over, they're there for me.
yeah. But it's like you live, and I constantly say this, you live in two worlds. Like we really do live in two worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. The I was going to say, do you think when you studied social welfare and social work, how much Aboriginal issues were in the course then to compare to how much are in courses now?
Well, there was nothing then, or
Yeah.
very little, and there's a little bit more than that now.
Yeah. A little bit. Yeah. I
Well,
agree with you. Well, I studied social work and I graduated 1997, which is now nearly 30 years ago. And I had to go to a different university to study an Aboriginal unit because there was no Aboriginal units in our course that were actually being offered. And even though our course offered really great critical social work theory, feminist practices, what it lacked was any understanding about working with Aboriginal people. And as I said, I had to go to a different university to actually study that particular subject I was really interested in. And I think now in that course there are about 2 units or 3 units about Aboriginal affairs, but they only came in about 10 years ago, if that makes sense. And I think they started with 1 unit and then they got to 2 units and now they're at 3 units. But it's been a gradual kind of progress. But what I'm still seeing, and I'm on a couple of social work curriculum, advisory groups, I'm still seeing so many social workers come out, 1, not understanding history, 2, not understanding how recent this history is, and then you wonder why they're struggling at doing trauma-informed care because they don't know where the trauma is coming from. They think it's coming from colonisation and stuff from hundreds of years ago. But unless you understand the 1967 referendum that gave our elders the right to be counted as citizens,
yeah.
right? They're people that, and stuff that's actually happened to people in my age that, because I talk about being stolen gen as well. People go, holy shit, I thought that was like hundreds of years ago. The reality is it's happened to the elders in our community right now. It's happened to our generation. And sometimes it's our kids and our grandkids are the first ones that are getting to university and finishing year 12. And this is where the new social workers aren't often seeing that as how recent that really is because I don't think it's been taught that way.
Oh, it absolutely isn't. Like I tell people, my dad was born and wasn't considered a citizen. My grandmother was born under the Act. They don't have no idea about what that means. They don't
Yeah.
understand what Dogger communities are. Like there's so much, lack of information about it. But we have, and I think one of the issues is that sometimes these courses are seen as electives rather than mandatory courses.
Yeah.
So if you don't have everybody do it, then you're gonna, people are gonna finish their social work degree without having any knowledge. And
Yeah.
and we only have here we have 1 course. That's it, and I teach it. So, but and I'm in a better position than quite a few other universities who either they don't have an Aboriginal person on staff, they don't have an Aboriginal, like us as Aboriginal social workers, we are as rare as hen's teeth.
Yeah.
Like, finding somebody in a university that can actually teach at this level as well as have all that lived experience and be an Aboriginal person is rare. So yes, there's a long way to go, and sometimes you just think, I just want to go home and not have to think about having to teach people who are going to be at the forefront of
Yeah.
dealing with Aboriginal people when they want to have a hand or some support, or if they need help, and even just the way you speak to somebody, you approach them. And I've had that experience working in the field as well, where I would stand back and watch people interact with Aboriginal people and see all the mistakes that they're making. Like sometimes you go and tell them, and then some people are happy and some people are not happy that you tell them
Yeah.
that.
I've done a lot of remote work and I've been out with our nurses and other health professionals that go out into some of the mobs out in rural areas and they talk really slowly at them and or they shout at them like they do speak English. It's like and I also see a lot of health professionals trying to use white assessment tools to assess mob that those tools don't match at all, and
No,
there often is no evaluation tool. Sometimes
no.
I know Tracy Westerman's got a lot in mental health,
Yeah,
but a lot of our health tools,
yeah.
our Aboriginal health checks are not. They're very white government health checks that are done that are not that don't match community and the mobs that I've actually worked with. My background's been
Well,
maternal health, so maternal health is very different. What
I
from
get
what I've
that.
experienced, what I've experienced out in the middle of Northern Territory compared to what I learnt in my nursing course when I was like 19. Very different.
I know. I had somebody say to me, "Oh, why don't they want to come to antenatal classes? Antenatal classes. Why don't they come to antenatal appointments?" I said, "Well, because they're not sick. They're
Yeah,
having a baby.
yeah.
That's not.
It's
You
a
go to the
spiritual
hospital.
event.
Yeah,
It's a
you go to
spiritual event.
hospital when you're sick. You're not when you're
Yeah,
having a baby. I'm not sick. I'm having a baby.
yeah,
So
yeah. This is a spiritual event.
yeah,
you know some of the communities I've been to go. They believe that a soul connects with a woman, and it's the woman's responsibility then to create a human form for this soul to interact on this earth. Now, if that's a belief system, yeah, what would antenatal classes do?
I know. And I've seen them go to communities and dress down. So they won't, no, when they try to talk, broken is
Yeah,
really like, or they'll call people auntie or uncle or
yeah,
without permission. There's lots of faux pas that I have seen that they do. And it's just, you kind of like, I sit back and cringe because I think, oh, you're doing all this stuff that's wrong.
yeah,
But there's another side of that too, though, is being an Aboriginal person, particularly whether you're in your own community or somebody else's community, there are protocols, and you're kind of like, I feel like you walk a tightrope sometimes because there's an expectation that you'll do the right thing because you should know these community protocols because you're Aboriginal.
yeah,
But then you're not part of the community, so you don't have a say or you don't have any. So you're kind of like, well, this is not my community, and you show respect. So I can't make these decisions and stuff like that. You're trying to engage with them, but you're always going to be an outsider. Like it's a bit, and you're constantly aware of like it's actually I think harder. Like, and that's one of the reasons why I never went to work in the territory because
yeah,
I'm really clear about me going to tell another community how to do their business is so
yeah.
inappropriate. Like I could go and say these are some of the things you can do, but yeah, I always struggled with that because I felt like it was not my place.
Yeah. Look, I delivered a lot of mental health first aid training in the Northern Territory. And the first thing I learned is that, and I would say to people up front, I'm not here to tell you how to do things. I'm just giving you the evidence-based research of strategies that might be really helpful for you to have conversations that you
Mm,
may not have thought about. And I think they really love that because it's not me coming and telling them how to do
mm,
business. It's me providing opportunities for them to fine tune conversations that maybe they don't have because they don't have
mm.
words to actually have it, or that they're not having the conversations at all. And I
Yeah.
found that most of the time they weren't having the conversations.
Yeah, I found that too. Like I used to go, and the other side of the coin too is that I used to go to bingo with my mum.
Because side was a taboo kind of subject.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd go to bingo with my mum, and I'd have people come up and approach me and talk to me about things that they were worried about, but they wouldn't come and talk to me in my office because they
Yeah,
didn't feel safe in that environment. So, like, and people don't realize that if you're an Aboriginal person, no matter what community you're in, you are seen as part of that community. And if you have a particular skill set or you work in a particular place, then you're the expert. You're the person that they go to. And it doesn't matter what time, day, or night. And if something happens with that service that they've done the wrong thing, then you're accountable for that as well to that community. And I used
yep,
to have many conversations with
yeah,
particularly non-Indigenous people, because I would say, I can't do that. I've got to live in this community. And they'd say, yeah, but this is your job, Linda. Like, you need to be. And I said, well, but I still have to live in that community. And I can tell you now, I'm picking that community over this job any day of the week.
I was just saying that I've worked in health services where, even on the weekends, I've had aunties come up to me. Oh, have my PAP results come back in, and has my colleagues going, you can't talk about that. I go, I can't tell aunt. I'm not going to tell auntie the results here, but I can tell her, yep, they've arrived. Come and talk to me on Monday. We can give them to you, because we don't turn off at 5 o'clock on Friday.
And that's the other thing too. Like if you go to any sort of event, like in where I'm from, Mount Isa, there's a big. It's called Marioki, which is like
Oh, I
karaoke
love
for
it.
yeah for Aboriginal people called Marioki, and it's held. There's a couple of events, but particularly around rodeo time, there's a big Marioki, and so if you're going to that event, you have to be really conscious because you know, people see you, they see what you do, and then you want to act like the professional later on, but they've seen you be charged up and partying, and do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you, there's a there's a benchmark that's a lot higher that you
Yes.
have to meet,
Yeah.
and not only you, but your family as well. So
Mm.
if my kids do something where and it gets back to the community that they've done something, that's on me, like that's they're part of my family, like it's all that family stuff as well. And I used to say that to my kids all the time. I said, you can't be doing stuff out here because that's going to come back on me, and vice versa.
Yeah.
If I do stuff, it's going to come back on you as well. So
Yeah. Now, I've got a question for you, and that is, if I had a magic wand and $1 zillion and said to you, you could fix something in Aboriginal affairs, where would you start? What would you do?
well, I haven't heard that term Aboriginal affairs for a while, but
I know. Pretty wide of me to say that.
I think look, there's so many areas. I'd fund ACCAs again. Like I would honestly, I think that they um, did a lot for Aboriginal people and Aboriginal families to keep Aboriginal families together. So I would fund ACCAs all over the country again. Um, I would change the education. I would change the education system for all of Australia and make it a prerequisite that we have to understand our history
Yeah.
and what happened. I also would like to change the way governments run so that Aboriginal people like a treaty or some acknowledgement of our history, but also change the actual structure of the government so that Aboriginal people had a real voice and power that went along
Mm.
with that voice in
Yeah.
decision making about not only Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but also about how the country is run and what's the priorities for this country, and have more Aboriginal people be a part of that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's probably the three. You're
Yeah. No,
dealing with,
that's awesome. And there's $1 zillion in that packet that I'm handing to you, so you can do the whole lot.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. If a young person came to you and said, "Hey, Linda, I want to be a social worker," and they're Aboriginal, what would you suggest to them to do? Where should they
Um,
start?
I, I do that all the time. So generally, what I find is that Aboriginal people are really it's a bit overwhelming to do university, and I can understand that. I often say to people, okay, go to a provider like Devange and do a diploma, because they can many people, especially young people, but even older people. I
Yeah.
say to people, older people who are 50, go and do a course with Devange and do get your diploma, and then you can use that diploma to take a year off your social work degree, and they can see that bit of that pathway. That's makes it real for them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the first step I find is too daunting. So, and if you do a certificate then or a diploma, it's giving you skills to be able to learn how to learn basically, because
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest issues is you don't know how to. to learn. Like it's a skill that you are taught in school. But yeah, so it's a pathway. It's the pathway stuff that you really need. And the other thing is we've got pathways here at the uni, and I'm often saying to people, this is the number, give them a call, talk to them about what qualifications you have or what experience you have. They'll talk you through what you need to do to be able to get into uni. You might do a bridging course or something. And then I say, you know, link in with your Indigenous study group, or, you know, there's so many educational supports for Aboriginal people or Torres Strait Islander people. Yeah, I can't forget Torres Strait Islander people, even though I'm not Torres Strait Islander.
Yeah. I've got two more questions. The other question is I presume where you work, because I've done some work at some of the universities teaching some of the subjects, and it's not until you're teaching the students that someone might come up to you and say, look, I've just found out that I'm Aboriginal and I want to connect. Where do you start? What suggestions do you give people to start their journey on trying to find out more about themselves?
There was a service, I don't know if it's still around anymore, Link Up. Have you heard of Link Up?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I don't, is it still around? Is Link Up still around?
It is, and I think in different states I've heard on social media, some are really great and some are not really great.
Oh, okay. The other thing too I've heard recently is this ancestry.com.
Yes.
People finding out some of their family and stuff through that means. So
Yeah.
that's another way. But also, like, I'll talk to them a little bit about, okay, so you found out, what does that mean? You found out I'm Aboriginal. How did you find out? Do you know where you're from? Because, and I don't think people realise this, I really do want to do a paper on it at some point, is what happens to all these people who have gone through a stolen generation, or they've even been removed as a young child or a child in like a child protection service, and they've grown up away from their family, had no contact. They don't really know who their mob is. They've not had much relationship with them. What is their, you know, what is their kinship group? What is their
Yeah.
country? What if they don't ever know that? How do they become culturally aware if they have never had that experience, if they've
Yeah.
not grown up with that? Because I was lucky, I got taught a lot of the stuff that I needed to know about being an Aboriginal person from my auntie
Yeah.
Lucy. So she talked to me when I was very young about what it means to be Aboriginal, what that looks like, how do we communicate, why is family important, why is country important. So you learn that stuff as an Aboriginal person. But if you've missed that, like you're
Yeah.
talking about, where I've just found out I'm Aboriginal, and you don't really have an idea about what that means, is like link up, ancestry.com, find out who your people are, find out what your country is, and do some research. Start to find out who your mob is, go introduce yourself to them. Just spend time with people and read to try and find out as much as you can. And you know, get on social media, start to link up to the people who talk about what it means to be Aboriginal, start to learn that sort of stuff, because and try to find your own family that can teach you that. And we all know, like, there are families who are Aboriginal families who are very who are dysfunctional and don't have very good connections. And then
Yeah.
there's other families that are very functional and have good connections, depending on which, you know. But even I've found, even dysfunctional families will have members in that which are functional that you can go to and
Yeah.
look for support and things like that. So it's about finding them.
Yeah. Now I'm watching the time, and I know that you have to go soon and have to put a wrap onto this. But my final question is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
Um, Educate yourself more on what it is to engage with an Aboriginal person in a
Yeah.
way that is supportive and empowering. Because one of the things that I try to do in everything that I do is do it in a way that is supportive and empowering, rather than focusing on all of the negative aspects. There's lots of negative aspects in everyday life for everybody, and in particular for Aboriginal people. But one of the things I love about Aboriginal people is we don't focus on that. We focus on humour and funny times and food and family, and all of those things are all the positives. And I think if you want to have a takeaway, it's Aboriginal people are amazing. seriously, you are very lucky to be an Aboriginal person.
We are.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, I want to say thank you for joining me. You know how much I love you and the work that you've been done, and I'll always support you doing whatever you do. Um, but I do want to say my fans and that thank you guys for hanging with me today. Thank you, Linda, for joining us. And guys, I'll see you at the next podcast. And thanks, Linda.
Thank you. Bye.